The Prime Minister and the President have exchanged on a number of occasions proposals that we think would be very significant to the economy of both countries.
Those talks are happening against the backdrop of the Mexican visit. Representatives from more than 240 Mexican businesses are here looking to forge closer ties.
The Prime Minister and President Sheinbaum committed Canada and Mexico to expand our economic ties, to increase bilateral trade between Canada and Mexico. This is a successful mission.
Something big just happened in North America. Mexico brought hundreds of companies to Canada, making deals fast and building strong ties before a major trade review. This could mean more jobs and growth for Canada, but it quietly leaves the US on the outside. Mexico's largest ever trade mission to Canada launched in Toronto on May 2026, and the scale, the timing, and the institutional seriousness of what arrived make this one of the most consequential bilateral engagements in North American trade history. Mexico's Ministry of Economy led the mission, convening 240 companies for over 1,800 business meetings across Toronto and Montreal, as both governments accelerate bilateral engagement ahead of the 2026 USMCA review. Mexico's Secretary of Economy, Marcelo Ebrard, personally led the delegation. Canada-US Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc was there to receive it. And the joint statement that emerged from 2 days of meetings in 2 cities described what both governments called a further demonstration of the strength, depth, and forward-looking nature of the Canada-Mexico partnership. Ebrard described it as an unprecedented working visit aimed at expanding investment and trade flow with Canada. The word unprecedented is not political language deployed for a routine delegation. Mexico has sent trade missions to Canada before. It has never sent one at this scale, with this level of ministerial engagement, with this many companies, and with this specific political purpose embedded in the timing. This mission is happening 6 weeks before the July 1st CUSMA review deadline, at the precise moment when how Canada and Mexico position themselves relative to each other and relative to Washington will shape the balance of power in the most consequential trade negotiation North America has seen since the original NAFTA was negotiated in the early 1990s. The bilateral commercial relationship these two countries are deepening is already substantial and growing faster than most people realize. Canada and Mexico recorded about $62 billion in bilateral merchandise trade in 2025. Canada was the second largest destination for Mexican goods last year, and those exports grew 17% between 2024 and 2025. Canadian trade with Mexico has seen a more than 12-fold increase since NAFTA came into force in 1995. That growth trajectory, 12-fold since 1995, 17% in a single year, describes a commercial relationship that has been accelerating well before the current political crisis, created additional urgency to diversify away from American dependence. The mission targets diversification across agro-industry, manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, electric mobility, and critical minerals. Supported by a bilateral trade relationship exceeding $56 billion and cumulative Canadian FDI in Mexico of $56.847 billion since 1999. The sector list is a precise inventory of where both countries need each other strategically. Electric mobility is the future of the automotive supply chain that currently anchors both economies. Critical minerals are the materials that everything from batteries to defense systems require. Pharmaceuticals are a sector where supply chain security has become a national priority following the pandemic's exposure of dependence vulnerabilities. Manufacturing integration creates the economies of scale and supply chain resilience that make both countries more competitive against Asian producers. Ebrard's schedule in Canada included planned meetings with executives from major Canadian companies, including Air Canada, Bombardier, Brookfield Corp, and Canadian National Railway. He was also slated to lead meetings between Mexican companies and Canadian investment funds, including the Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan, one of the largest pension funds in the world. The Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan meeting is particularly significant. OTPP manages approximately $250 billion in assets and has long been an active investor in infrastructure, real estate, and private equity across North America. Mexican companies seeking Canadian institutional capital, facilitated by ministerial level engagement, is not a symbolic exchange. It is the architecture of a commercial relationship, being deliberately constructed to function independently of American intermediation. LeBlanc said Ottawa is preparing for a robust and joint review of USMCA with both Mexico and the United States. This collaboration offers enormous opportunities, he said. The phrase joint review carries specific strategic weight. Canada has consistently maintained that the CUSMA review is a trilateral process, not a bilateral negotiation between the United States and Canada in which Mexico participates separately, and not a bilateral negotiation between the United States and Mexico in which Canada participates separately. Washington has at various points signaled interest in conducting bilateral discussions with each party individually, which would allow American negotiators to apply concentrated pressure to each country without the two having the ability to coordinate their positions. Canada and Mexico coordinating extensively before the formal review begins is the structural counter to that approach. The current mission is itself the reciprocal of a Canadian initiative that preceded it. This mission follows one of the largest Canadian trade missions ever, which went to Mexico in February and touched down in Mexico City, Guadalajara, and Monterrey. LeBlanc said that mission resulted in about 20 new deals between businesses from both countries. The February Canadian mission to Mexico, followed by the May Mexican mission to Canada, represents a sustained bilateral diplomatic and commercial engagement that has been running in parallel with the tariff conflict throughout 2026. While Washington's relationship with both countries has been characterized by threats, tariffs, and unpredictability, the Canada-Mexico relationship has been characterized by ministerial visits, trade missions, new commercial deals, and a joint action plan being developed for presentation to both countries' leaders in the second half of 2026. That joint action plan will focus on joint initiatives related to minerals, investment in ports, infrastructure, and supply chain security. Cooperation on security issues also looks set to be a feature of the bilateral action plan. Minerals, ports, infrastructure, and supply chain security together describe the strategic architecture of a North American economic partnership that does not require Washington's participation to function. Both Canada and Mexico produce critical minerals that global industrial supply chains need. Both have port infrastructure with capacity to develop. Both have supply chain integration that extends beyond North America into Asia, Europe, and Latin America. A joint action plan covering all of these areas is not a symbolic gesture. It is a building plan. Eberhard said the mission is part of a longer-term strategy to deepen ties between the two countries at a time when the global economy is rapidly shifting. We are looking for new opportunities. The concerns surrounding the CUSMA review include the specific risk that the United States could choose not to extend the agreement for another 16 years, allowing it to operate on a year-by-year review basis that would sustain indefinite uncertainty for the businesses, supply chains, and investment decisions that depend on predictable trade rules. Both Canada and Mexico have made clear they want the trilateral structure preserved. Both are demonstrating, through the scale and seriousness of the trade missions they are exchanging, that they are prepared to deepen bilateral cooperation with or without Washington's full participation in the process. 240 Mexican companies, 1,800 business meetings, Toronto and Montreal, 6 weeks before the CUSMA deadline. The signal is not subtle.